The only thing he wished for was to be happy, to fall in love one day, to laugh in the company of good friends, and to live a completely ordinary school life. That was what he had always asked for. But reality had other plans. On Monday, he was beaten up. On Tuesday, toilet water was dumped on him. On Wednesday, his personal photos were leaked online. And on Thursday, he found himself planning his permanent journey to the metaphysical world. Today was Friday, and as he stood on the edge, he thought surely, if he fell from that height, it would be fatal. Yet, a small part of him wondered if he might survive if he landed in the bushes. All he needed to do was calculate his trajectory to ensure he fell just right. Before he could take any action, a girl appeared, her voice breaking through his dark thoughts. "Hey, there's someone else here too," she called out, her tone light and casual. He hadn't thought anyone else would be around, and now he felt a rush of panic. What was he supposed to do? Glancing quickly at her, he noticed she turned halfway around, her curiosity piqued. He tried to ask her to wait, worried she might call for help, but what she did next took him completely by surprise. With a swift motion, she caught a bird with her bare hands. "A crow," she said, holding it up for him to see. "Its body has been lying here on the terrace," she explained, her eyes sparkling with an odd mix of excitement and sadness. Then, as if sensing the weight of his despair, she asked, "Is it your wish to be as alive as this crow? Because if you're planning to go through with it, it would be much better to hand your life over to me instead." At first, he was taken aback, struggling to comprehend her proposal. Dying was a great waste, she insisted, and there were still so many fun things to experience in life. Her words ignited a spark of anger within him. "You don't know anything about me," he shot back, frustration bubbling to the surface. "You can't just say what's best for my life." He assumed she had come to mock him, to add to his misery. But the girl shook her head, her expression earnest. "That's not why I'm here," she said softly. "I want to give your life a better purpose." Her words hung in the air, and he felt a flicker of curiosity. What did she mean by that? She continued, asking him what came to mind when he looked at the crow. Did he find its lifeless body cute? He couldn't help but grimace at the thought. "Not even slightly beautiful," he replied, disgust evident on his face. To his surprise, she agreed, explaining that the body was just a stinking, rotten pile of garbage. "Garbage," she said, her voice steady. "That's exactly how you're treated at school. Like an idiot, like human trash. That crow is in a better place than you are, only becoming garbage after its death. You, on the other hand, are a piece of garbage even while alive." Her words struck him like a slap. Was that really how he felt? "Is that why you want to end your own existence?" she asked gently. He nodded, the weight of his despair pressing down on him. But even as he stood on the edge, contemplating his fate, she remained there, as if she were offering him a lesson in life. "What do you intend with all this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Despite their conversation, she showed no intention of stopping him from doing what he wanted. She didn't know anything about him, but she could tell that he surely must have a miserable life. Framing him between her fingers, she asked him to tell her more. "Would you really be okay with being trash for the rest of your life?" That question ignited a fire within him, making him angry. Deep down, there was a part of him that disagreed with that notion. He wanted a normal life, to have friends, to laugh like other people do. Even though having a girlfriend felt completely out of reach, he longed to live the best days of his youth. The girl noticed the shift in his expression, understanding better how he felt. Clinging to the railing, she leaned closer, her eyes sparkling with determination. "I can guarantee you a life like that," she declared, her words leaving him completely stunned. She began climbing the railing to get closer to him. "If you're interested in finishing your years at school, you should hand over control of your life to me. You'll become my puppet, and only then will you be happy." The idea was absurd, yet a part of him was intrigued. "And since you want a girlfriend, if you really become my puppet, I wouldn't mind helping you with that in any way I can." It was a tempting offer, and he found himself considering it. "Do you wish for that to happen?" she asked, her gaze unwavering. Still a little hesitant, he replied, "That's not what I want." Suddenly, the girl grabbed him by the knot of his tie, her grip firm and unyielding. "We're doing this now," she exclaimed, jumping off the ledge. As they fell, she proposed a condition. If they both survived, he would have to become her puppet. As the ground rushed toward them, he wondered if this was really happening. Death felt imminent, and in those fleeting moments, he recalled the unpleasant moments from his life. Any reason had been enough for him to endure humiliation, repeated situations that he no longer wanted to be a victim of. During those moments, he always wondered why this happened to him, feeling completely powerless to express his anger. He just hoped that all those people who had tormented him would rot in hell. Then, the fall was over. They landed in the bushes, and he felt a sharp pain shoot through his body. Soon, he began to agonize, possibly having broken his arm during the fall. Beside him, the girl smiled at everything that had happened, unfazed by the pain. "See? The fall wasn't dangerous enough to end our lives," she said cheerfully. She grabbed his arms, her grip surprisingly gentle. "From now on, you'll be my puppet," she declared. "It's time for us to start understanding each other better." Once again, she emphasized that he had become her puppet, and she would manipulate the strings that controlled him. "Imagine yourself as a remote control car," she instructed, her tone playful yet serious. He still didn't fully understand why she was doing this, but for her, the reason was simple. She was tired of living her own life, so she decided to control someone else's. In doing so, she believed she could create the perfect life for that person. Kneeling before him, she swore she would lead him to a perfect and happy life, but only if he agreed to become her puppet. The boy was now intrigued, wondering if he could truly be happy. If it were possible, he didn't mind being a puppet. The only thing he desired was to be happy. Sensing his uncertainty, the girl smiled and said, "Yes, happiness is possible. And now, here's your first command for a happy life." She leaned closer, her face inches from his, and asked him to close his eyes. He complied, heart racing with anticipation. Then, she kissed him, as if they were lovers. Of all the possible things that could happen, this one definitely hadn't crossed his mind. It made him thoughtful, wondering why he had been suddenly kissed. The girl explained, "A kiss releases hormones in the body, like oxytocin, the happiness hormone. It puts your body in a euphoric state. One of my goals is for all my puppets to be happy. A story with a happy ending is always better to watch. That's why you will be happy. But to achieve that, you must obey all my commands. I don't need a disobedient puppet, and if you ever rebel, I will break you." He felt a chill run down his spine at her words, but there was also a strange comfort in her certainty. "Now, here's another command," she continued. "I want you to share one of your desires." He hesitated, unsure of what to say. To make it easier for him to understand, she asked, "What would you wish for if you wanted a happy life and met a magical genie? If you could wish for anything, what would it be?" After a moment of contemplation, he finally spoke. "I would want to take revenge on everyone who bullied me." The girl's eyes lit up with excitement. "That's an excellent idea. You've done very well in revealing your desire, because now I will fulfill it." His heart raced at her words. This was his wish, and it seemed to please her immensely. Patting his head, she assured him, "I will make this wish come true." The day passed, and he returned home, lying in bed with his arm bandaged from the injury he sustained in the fall. As he reflected on the girl, he thought she was just a weirdo. Even though she said she would fulfill his wish, nothing had changed. It would have been better if he had just died. Looking back, he realized that since his first day at school, nothing had gone well. It was hard to believe he had been bullied for such trivial things. His life really didn't seem worth anything at all. As he lay there, he wished that tomorrow would never come. But he knew he had to go back to school. When he arrived, he found the chair he sat in was completely vandalized. Someone couldn't believe he had come back. The boy sneered, "The trash is making the whole room stink." He was surprised that he had broken his arm. "I guess you must have fallen and felt a lot of pain," the bully taunted. He wanted to write something on the cast of his arm, but didn't know what to write. Knowing he was about to be humiliated, he didn't let the guy write anything. After that reaction, the boy seemed to lose interest. "You're such a buzzkill. Just go sit down already," he said dismissively. However, that behavior wasn't normal, leaving him thoughtful as he made his way to his seat. Just then, someone shouted that they would show the others something really cool. The guy who said it always did whatever he wanted, and as expected, he kicked the boy from behind. The force of the impact sent him crashing to the ground, dragging some desks and chairs along with him. The jerk bragged about his clean and well-executed kick, looking around for validation. "Did anyone record that?" he asked, and one of his friends chimed in that they had. They all laughed, entertained by the recording, saying it turned out really cool. Meanwhile, the boy who had been assaulted stood back up, a clear sign that he was ready for round 2. This time, the jerk planned to use his fists. Before the assault could continue, a girl entered the classroom, drawing everyone's attention. It was the same girl who had interacted with him the other day. She wanted to know what they were doing, but the jerk immediately found her very attractive. Interested, he asked which class she belonged to. The person who seemed to be the teacher explained that the girl was part of this class since she was a transfer student. He was surprised to learn she was a transfer student, even more so when he saw her waving at him. Upon hearing this, the jerk questioned why the teacher hadn't informed him earlier. The girl replied that she had announced it during the previous day's assembly. Realizing he had missed that, the jerk apologized for not listening and, being polite, asked for the girl's name. She introduced herself as Tamada Kubo and wrote her name on the blackboard. Approaching the jerk, she said it was a pleasure to meet him. Seeing that even her name was beautiful, he wanted her phone number. To his delight, she shared it without hesitation, using a QR code. The jerk added her to his friend list, expressing his wish for them to get along. The protagonist observed the interaction with a mix of sadness and disbelief until Tamada looked at him with interest. "What's your name?" she asked, walking over to him and completely ignoring the jerk. She mentioned that she had missed the chance to ask his name the day before. He stuttered a little before answering. "Kudo. That's a very nice name," she said, smiling brightly. "I'm happy to have met you." To the jerk, the fact that the girl showed any interest in Kudo was a sign that she had something loose in her head. He began sharing embarrassing stories about Kudo, walking up to him. "Why should I care about that?" Tamada asked, her tone genuine. "In my honest opinion, it sounds like you're about to tell a very boring story." She looked at the teacher, asking where her seat was. The teacher informed her that she would be sitting next to Kudo. For her, this was definitely fate, and she was thrilled at the chance to sit beside him. The jerk, watching everything unfold like a spectator, was left speechless. He was completely unable to understand why Tamada had chosen the other guy, Kaiba, and not him. In his mind, Kaiba was just a loser who had stepped in dog poop. It felt surreal that she would pick him over someone like Kudo. This couldn't be happening. Fueled by jealousy, he pulled out his phone, ready to humiliate Kudo once again. He planned to invite the new girl to a virtual group and post a video of Kudo being humiliated during lunch break. As the lunch bell rang, Kudo and Tamada decided to eat together. Kudo hesitated, wanting to know if she couldn't eat with someone else, but Tamada refused. After all, this was the perfect opportunity for a strategic meeting. As he munched on his sandwich, he still didn't fully grasp what she was suggesting. Sensing his confusion, she asked if he had completely forgotten what had happened the day before. Defensively, "We're gonna get revenge on everyone who bullied you," she said, her eyes sparkling with determination. She told him she had been invited to join the class's virtual group, and even showed him the invitation. Among the videos, there was one where Kudo was being humiliated. The jerk, who had been so eager for Tamada's attention, was clearly upset about being rejected. As Kudo watched the video of himself being humiliated, he felt a wave of shame wash over him. "Please don't watch that," he pleaded. But Tamada shrugged it off. "There's no need to react like that. I've already seen it," she replied casually. "I feel embarrassed when I'm naked too." Kudo's frustration grew. The situation was truly miserable. "You shouldn't have watched it," he snapped, feeling humiliated all over again. To her, it might have been a simple embarrassment, but for him, it was much worse, something he didn't want anyone to see. "Is that truly what you wish for?" she asked, tilting her head. "Wasn't that video published on a public platform?" He confirmed that it definitely wasn't in the group. She smiled maliciously, her eyes glinting with mischief. "If that's the case, we could post the original video ourselves." The suggestion was completely absurd. Kudo thought about it, horrified. "No one in their right mind would do something so humiliating," he exclaimed. He even wondered if she had heard anything he said, as he hated that video. "Is it your wish that the video wouldn't go viral?" she asked, her tone serious. He nodded, confirming that was indeed what he wanted. Knowing this, she pressed on. "Do you truly want to take revenge on those who bullied you?" Kudo hesitated. "There are other ways to get revenge on those people," he said, trying to regain some control over the conversation. Tamada raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "If that's the case, How do you intend to carry out your revenge? As she observed him, he realized he didn't know what to do. He could change his tactics, but that would come at a cost. The brutal nature of reality hit him hard. There was no revenge without risk. It was impossible for him to be so naive as not to know this, and he felt completely disappointed. The girl, however, seemed to sympathize with his situation. She reminded him that just the day before, he had been on the verge of taking his own life. If you were strong enough to stand on that ledge, this situation is no big deal, she said, her tone encouraging. Who knows? Maybe you lacked the courage to carry out what you had planned yesterday. Agitated, he insisted. I'm determined to follow through with my plan. The girl smiled with a certain satisfaction. If you're truly determined, this situation won't be difficult at all. I've even created an account and taken the trouble to write the post for you. All you need to do is press the button to upload the content. He listened, intrigued yet apprehensive. The video description was peculiar. They would pretend to be bullying him, as if the one responsible for it was blatantly confessing the crime they had committed. This is a much more secure way to draw justice to this cause, she explained. That single video will capture everyone's attention. Since the account is new, it doesn't have any followers yet. But by adding some viral hashtags, it will be easy to make the content popular. Your video of humiliation will undoubtedly set the internet ablaze, and all we need to do after that is let society deliver its justice. Worried, he imagined the potential fallout. This could cause numerous problems for my school, he said, anxiety creeping into his voice. The girl wisely reminded him, the school doesn't care about you. In fact, you're the only person capable of saving yourself. It doesn't need to make sense to worry about adults who aren't willing to help you. If you don't do this, you'll end up miserable for the rest of your life, and that's not the outcome you want for yourself. Trying to comfort him, she added, it's okay, you just need to do as I instruct, and that way, you'll surely be happy. Besides, I'll always be here to protect you. With the phone in his hand, he hesitated for a moment before posting. With a single click, the video now belonged to the internet. At first, he thought no one had noticed what was happening. Surely, no one would pay attention since it was posted from an account with no followers. However, as seconds passed, reactions began pouring in. Many people started reacting to his post, and with that, numerous new followers began joining. Likewise, people began expressing outrage at the bully's behavior. He was so shocked by the immediacy of it all that he dropped his phone on the floor behind him. The girl congratulated him, saying he had done a great job. She picked up the phone from the floor, saying that all they needed to do now was wait. So it's better to head back to class? She suggested. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the school, a student ran up to the bully with alarming news. The bully had no idea what was happening, so his classmate urged him to check the class group. Even he found it hard to believe what he was seeing. It's just a post on the internet, he scoffed. It's not a big deal. Soon, people will forget about it, and no one will find our school. Even if they did, no one would have the courage to show up here. As he walked away, a strange guy asked, are you sure no one would really have the courage? It didn't seem like it, but that guy was a streamer who specialized in this kind of content. The bully, however, didn't understand what that meant. He didn't even know there was a niche for this on the internet. The guy may not have looked like much, but he had 5,000 followers. The jerk was impressed. That really seemed pretty cool. Today, the boy was going to be a guest in one of his live streams. Still confused about what was happening, the jerk felt uncomfortable with the approach. In a moment of frustration, he slapped the guy across the face. The streamer turned to his phone, eyes wide, and asked if people had seen that. Did you just hit me? He exclaimed. The jerk stammered that it was an accident, but the streamer wasn't buying it. Is that really the excuse you're going to use? Is that what you tell your victims too? The jerk tried to defend himself, saying they were just joking around. The streamer looked back at his phone, addressing his audience. This guy thinks it's just a joke, he said incredulously. Without a doubt, he's a piece of trash. And among pieces of trash, he's the worst. It's people like him who ruin the society we live in. With that, the streamer declared he had to teach the jerk a lesson. Judgment came quickly as he started beating up the bully. The jerk cried out in pain after being hit, still having the audacity to ask why he was being beaten. Unfortunately, The live stream got blurry because the guy was too busy hitting the jerk while holding the camera. But he still managed to ask his audience if they saw what had happened. Some viewers commented that hitting the jerk was going too far, but the streamer defended himself. "I didn't hit him, he's wearing the channel's badge. Everyone who wears it consents to be on the stream." In the end, he claimed it was all an act, and that the jerk was exceptional at playing his role. Looking at his phone, he assured his audience that no one had actually gotten hurt. A discussion started among viewers, with some defending the streamer, saying he only retaliated against the jerk's aggression. Meanwhile, the piece of trash continued standing there in the background, bewildered and humiliated. The streamer had one last question for the jerk. "Why did you bully that boy?" The jerk took a moment to respond, thinking hard about what had really motivated him to do that. He remembered seeing Kudo walking with perfect posture, thinking he seemed like a really cool guy. That's why he had approached him. He recalled overhearing some girls talking about Kudo as he entered and thought Kudo must be very popular. By distracting him, he had caused Kudo to step in dog poop. It was unfortunate because Kudo had seemed to be wearing new sneakers. Nearby, two girls approached the jerk, and the first thing he said about Kudo was that he had stepped in dog poop. The girls immediately told him to stop teasing Kudo, insisting it wasn't funny at all. "It's like slipping on a banana peel," he retorted, trying to defend his joke. But the girls shot back that that kind of humor suited him. Unfunny and immature. He claimed it was better for Kudo because now he had a funny story to tell. But Kudo was upset. He shrugged the jerk's hand off his shoulder and said, "It's not funny at all." At first, the jerk was left speechless, not liking the way Kudo looked at him. He then tried to explain that what he really wanted was to be friends with Kudo, but the streamer didn't buy that narrative. "You're just playing the victim to avoid judgment," he said, shaking his head in disbelief. "It's truly pathetic." With that, he wiped the front of his shoe on the jerk's face, a final act of humiliation. Back at school, Kudo heard what had happened. It seemed the jerk had been attacked during lunch, and students started talking about how it really had gone down. The school contacted the authorities, and the culprit had already been arrested as a result of the beating. The jerk needed medical attention, and the teacher told everyone to go home early that day. The class was abuzz with gossip about what had happened to him. Kudo began to realize the implications of the situation. The girl beside him thought this was a beneficial outcome for him because, with this incident, they had achieved their goal. From now on, there was no one left to bully him. However, Kudo wasn't sure if this was the right decision. As they talked, the video continued spreading on the internet, and to be honest, he was completely terrified about it. But that wasn't the only thing he felt. The girl suggested that they skip school tomorrow and go out on a date instead. Completely enchanted, Kudo wanted to see what future she had in store for him. He went back home, unable to stop thinking about how she had proposed to go on a date. Because of that, he couldn't get a single minute of sleep. He started wondering if he had even combed his hair, only to realize he was beginning to feel anxious. He was just an ordinary guy, yet this beautiful girl had decided to go out with him. The thought made his heart race. The next day, she was very happy to see him and asked why he was wearing his school uniform. He explained that his parents would know if he went out in anything other than his school clothes, so he planned to change in the bathroom. She understood and said he could change now. Once in the bathroom, he had no idea what to do. He felt completely content at that moment. But a nagging thought lingered in the back of his mind. He was certain that she must be dangerous in some way. Yet she was too beautiful, and like any other guy, he had a weakness for gorgeous women. When he returned to her, he saw a few guys trying to flirt with her. As soon as she noticed Kudo approaching, she walked over to him with a smile on her face. "You took quite a while," she said playfully. The guys backed off, assuming she must have a boyfriend. Once they were together, Tamada asked if they could go to the aquarium. As they entered, Kudo felt a wave of excitement wash over him. Everything there was so beautiful. It almost felt like a dream. Tamada found the marine animals fascinating, her eyes lighting up as she marveled at the size of the whale shark. They spent the day taking lots of photos and observing all sorts of creatures. Even the dessert they ordered was beautifully presented. Sitting at the table, Tamada asked if Kudo was enjoying himself. "I am," he replied, and it was nice to see her smile at his response. Once seated, he gathered the courage to ask why she had invited him on this date. She explained that she did it with his future in mind. At first, he couldn't understand how this outing related to his future, but she elaborated. In the future, you'll want to fall in love and go on dates, she said. This date is an introductory lesson to teach you how to shape your behavior and present yourself as someone interesting. You need to gather some experience, otherwise, you might ruin your first real date. So, today is nothing more than a bit of practice. Intrigued, Kudo asked if she would like to date him. But before he could finish his sentence, she said, no. More directly, she explained that she didn't even like him that way. After all, they barely knew each other, and she wasn't interested in romance at all. All I want is to keep playing with my puppets, she said. I'm here to pull the strings and guide you toward a happy life. To me, you're just a puppet. Nothing more, nothing less. Despite her bluntness, they continued to enjoy the day, taking photos and having fun until it was time to say goodbye. She thanked him for the pleasant day and asked if he'd be able to get home on time. Since it wasn't very late, he assured her it wouldn't be a problem. Knowing that, she finally said goodbye, mentioning that she would turn the photos from that day into an album. Kudo felt grateful for the memories they had created together. Just then, a familiar vibrating sound from his phone broke the moment. It was his father calling. When he answered, he was met with a torrent of complaints. His father had found out he had skipped school. The teacher had just called him, leaving Kudo feeling humiliated. His father's voice was harsh as he told him not to bother coming home, wishing he would die on his way back. Only a despicable father could say something like that to his own child. This was one of the reasons Kudo hated talking to him. His father never thought about the impact of his words. Knowing he was in trouble now, Tamada asked if he was okay. She apologized, saying it was her fault for making him skip school that day. But it's fine, he replied, trying to brush it off. He had accepted the invitation, knowing the risks involved. Intrigued, she asked if he didn't get along with his family. Not at all, he admitted. We barely look each other in the eye. She apologized for bringing it up, saying people should appreciate their families. However, she added that he wasn't obligated to do so. Looking at him, it was clear how much this situation hurt him. No matter who it is, telling someone to die is always cruel. If Kudo didn't like his family, Tamada suggested he run away. You could come with me if you wanted, she offered casually. But for someone who didn't even like him that way, he thought it was strange for her to say such things. He couldn't just start depending on her unconditional love. That's out of context, she replied, sensing his hesitation. Since I have no feelings for you, I have no expectations, whether physical or romantic. In other words, I have no ulterior motives. The only thing I want is to save you. Isn't that good enough? As her words sank in, Kudo's memory started to blur. It was that day when everything changed. It was exactly on that day that he felt he had fallen in love with her. The realization hit him hard, and he was sure he had developed feelings for her. Tamada then suggested they head home, adding that they should buy some snacks at a convenience store and throw a little party. Do you like watching movies? She asked. I rent movies weekly. Kudo admitted he liked them too, and they made their way to the convenience store to buy what they needed. As they walked, there was something Kudo wanted to say to Tamada. He wanted to thank her for everything she had done for him, but she brushed it off, saying she hadn't done anything extraordinary. She also noted that calling her by her family name didn't make them sound like friends, so he could call her by her first name. That left Kudo flustered. She tried to get him to say her name, but he couldn't manage it. Embarrassed, he ended up apologizing to her. He also thanked her for sponsoring their shopping trip, since they were able to buy plenty of snacks. Pointing to a building, she said, I live there. Kudo looked at the structure, noticing it was a massive building. Apparently, she lived in a high-end place. Opening the door, she invited him inside. This is a very spacious apartment, Kudo remarked, taking in the surroundings. He asked about her parents, but she said they weren't there. I live completely alone in this apartment, she added. Sitting on the sofa, she asked him to keep her company. Do you have any movie preferences? She inquired. Kudo replied that anything would do, but there was one movie he was curious about. He had heard it was very good. They agreed to watch that movie, and as they sat on the couch, Kudo reflected on how peaceful it all felt. He wished intensely for that moment to last forever. But then, his phone started ringing again. It was his dad. Tamada noticed his expression change and said, "It's okay, you should answer it." Stepping outside, Kudo hesitated, wanting to know what his dad wanted. After all, he was still his father, and maybe he was genuinely worried. On the other end of the line, Kudo replied that he was at a friend's house and had been allowed to stay the night. That only made his dad angrier. "You need to come home immediately," he ordered, his voice rising. "I know you're at a girl's house. Young boys like you are too naive." He added that he was on his way to pick Kudo up. The whole situation frustrated Kudo further. His dad had him attacked, and now he didn't want to go home at all. Opening the door, Tamada asked if he was okay. She had overheard everything and apologized, noting that his dad tended to talk loudly. "Since he's upset, it might be better for you to go home," she suggested. But then she remembered he didn't need to leave since his dad said he would come to pick him up. "We might as well stay and wait for his arrival," she concluded. To Kudo's dismay, his dad's arrival was quicker than expected. He was already waiting outside, demanding Kudo come down immediately. "I tracked you using your phone's GPS," he shouted. The realization that there was an app spying on his phone only made Kudo angrier. Tamada asked if they should head down, but Kudo noticed an envelope in her hands. "I'll convince your father that you don't need to go home," she said confidently. Kudo didn't understand, but she ordered him to stay at the entrance, insisting he wasn't to disobey her. Without any manners, his father called her a whore who had seduced his son, adding that she even dressed like one. Kudo imagined this wouldn't end well. Not knowing what his father was capable of, he thought he should go outside too. As soon as his father saw him, he declared that Kudo was going home with him. In response, Tamada handed the man the envelope she was holding. It was full of money, and she had prepared it for emergencies like this. "Take the money and leave Kudo with me," she said firmly. Kudo was confused, assuming it must be some kind of prank. "It's not a prank," she insisted, asking if 1 million wasn't enough. "You're the kind of father no mother would give up her child for. Especially not for dirty money." His father scoffed, saying she must have gotten that money by selling her body since she looked like a slut. Kudo tried to ask his father to stop, but Tamada pressed on. "Think of other ways to make money," she suggested. "But you probably believe a woman can only get money that way. You're truly an uncreative and pitiful man. With you as a father, Kudo will never have a happy life." Irritated, his father shot back. "It's not up to you to decide that." But Tamada wasn't finished. "Why did you tell your son to die?" she asked, her voice steady. The man replied, "I did it for his own good. When I was his age, my bosses used to say the same thing. Weak people have no place in this world. They were tough on me so I could learn that too." Inevitably, Tamada laughed after hearing this, and Kudo could see the disbelief in her eyes. His father didn't understand the impact of his words. What was so funny? Kudo's father snapped, his anger palpable. Tamada replied, "It's an utterly ridiculous story. It only shows that you can't be bothered to care about your son. In fact, you probably don't care about him at all." She wanted to know what he would do if his son actually died. The man scoffed. "People don't just die because someone tells them to. Contrary to what you think, they absolutely do. And very easily," Tamada shot back. "Especially when the person saying it is their parent. It's impossible for you not to know how your son feels. After all, you're Kudo's father." Convinced, the man insisted he did know how the boy had been feeling. "Even so, I call him a coward. That's why I'm teaching him to be a man." Tamada countered, "You have the wrong impression. Words alone don't count as education. After talking to you, I finally understand. You're completely unnecessary for Kudo's happiness. I will be the one responsible for it." The man only grew angrier, saying she didn't know anything. "Are you planning to marry my son?" he asked incredulously. "Having a peaceful family to raise a child in is the first step to a happy life," she explained. "To ensure he has such a future, I will help Kudo boost his popularity, intelligence, achievements, and more. But I won't be the one to build a family with him. I will simply act as his control tower. From this day forward, I will show Kudo how to be happy under my guidance." Such a bold statement left them both deep in thought. To Kudo's father, it was all a joke. After all, she was just a kid. "If you're truly capable of doing that, prove it to me now," he challenged. Taking her phone, Tamada said she wouldn't waste any more time. She began talking to her father about something they had discussed earlier. "Do it immediately," she instructed before ending the call. The man didn't understand what was happening until his own phone started ringing. To his surprise, it was the company president. Tamada urged him to answer. It must be urgent. When he picked up, the person on the other end apologized for the sudden call. They expressed gratitude for his work, but said it was necessary to let him go. "We apologize for this decision," they said, "and we ask that you don't hold a grudge. We also have families to support." When the call ended, Kudo's father turned to Tamada, his expression a mix of disbelief and anger. "Was this your doing?" "Indeed it was," she replied calmly. "I asked my father to do this for me. Are you familiar with the Tamada Real Estate Group?" He knew exactly who they were. That company had bought the business he worked for, and it was led by her father. "So you asked your father to fire me?" he asked incredulously. Tamada nodded. "I wouldn't even mind asking my father to rehire you, but if you continue being resistant, I will ensure you won't be hired anywhere else." Frustrated, Kudo accused Tamada of joking, but she confirmed it was no bluff. "Now it's up to you to decide what to do," she said, her tone serious. "The fact remains, you've been fired. As a grown man, you should know what the right choice is." The man collapsed to the floor in disappointment, realizing he had no choice. Tamada extended the envelope toward him, and he grabbed it, completely furious. It seemed he had made the right decision after all. Turning back to Kudo, she said, "I've removed an obstacle from your path. Now we can go back to watching the movie peacefully." She grabbed him by the arm, hurrying him along. Kudo returned to the apartment, still incredulous about what had just happened. "I only did it because you insisted," he said, trying to process the whirlwind of events. Now, he wanted to know what Kudo's relationship with her was. It wasn't for him to dwell on, so he decided to ask the boy directly. Back in the apartment, they settled in to finish watching the movie. Kudo felt a huge burden lift off his shoulders. With Tamada's intervention, he wouldn't have to deal with his father anymore. But at the same time, he wasn't sure if this was the right decision. He was still a minor, and leaving home was never a good idea. Even so, he felt a great deal of gratitude toward her and was thankful to have a place to stay. Yet, uncertainty gnawed at him, especially since he had cut ties with everyone in his life. Those people were still his family, and he couldn't help but wonder what his mother would say when she found out. She probably wouldn't say anything, as she always followed behind his father. Noticing he seemed deep in thought, Tamada asked if something was wrong. "Are you worried about what just happened?" she inquired. "If that's the case, I won't judge you. After all, you've just been separated from your family." She assured him everything would be fine. "I promise to make you happy," she swore. Kudo wanted to know why she always acted that way. The movie finally ended, and she said it had been a lot of fun. Kudo agreed, admitting he had been deeply moved by the story. The final scene had been great, but Tamada thought it was bordering on cliché. She suggested another movie to watch next, and Kudo couldn't believe they were going to watch a second film. "Do you not want to?" she asked, a teasing glint in her eye. "No, I would actually love to," he replied, feeling a rush of excitement. They ended up watching a romance movie, a classic choice for anyone having a date at home. Tamada told him that all of this would serve as practice for his future. Kudo didn't believe something like that could happen to him, but for now, she just wanted them to enjoy the movie. Usually, he didn't watch this type of film, so he felt a bit nervous. Then came a kissing scene on the screen that lasted much longer than he expected. It was definitely way too embarrassing for Kudo. That was when Tamada touched his hand, breaking the tension. In moments like this, it's expected that you hold the hand of the person watching with you, she said, demonstrating how it should be done. Taking advantage of their proximity, she suggested they kiss too, but that was too much for him. "We can't do that under any circumstances," he exclaimed, his face flushing. Tamada looked intrigued, as if she were trying to decipher his reaction. "You don't want to kiss me?" she asked, her tone playful. The truth was, he actually would like to kiss her, but he couldn't admit that. "That's exactly why we shouldn't try," he replied, feeling flustered. "You should have more self-respect." She laughed lightly, finding his reasoning nonsensical. "I wouldn't mind kissing you," she said, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "But that's exactly the problem. It would make me have expectations, and you shouldn't do that to someone you just rejected." Tamada found it odd since he had never confessed to her. "When we were at the aquarium, you said you didn't like me," he reminded her. I'm just defining our positions in this relationship. This left him feeling quite confused. Now she understood why he felt rejected. You're truly a headache sometimes, he said, exasperated. If two people aren't in a relationship, they shouldn't kiss so casually. No matter how much you want me to be happy, you should at least have some morals. With that stance, she said, Fine, I won't kiss you anymore. But thinking about your future, I still wish for you to gain some romantic experience. Hearing that, Kudo was left speechless. Then she proposed that tomorrow at school, they should find him a girlfriend. Let's get straight to the point, she said enthusiastically. You should write your own romantic comedy. She wanted to know if there was a girl he was interested in, but the only thought that came to his mind was that she was the one. Without revealing that, he said, I don't have anyone in mind. I've been bullied for so long that I haven't had time to make friends, let alone develop feelings for someone. Knowing this, Tamada realized they now had a starting point. Things aren't that simple, Kudo insisted, but she assured him he shouldn't worry. You don't have an unattractive face. It's only a matter of time before you get closer to a girl. He wasn't sure if that was a compliment, but she continued, Look over there. She pointed to a girl erasing the blackboard, who seemed to be struggling. Why don't you go help her? Maybe that way you can become her hero. Doing something like that, just because someone told him to, made Kudo feel strange. Kudo approached the girl, asking if she was okay and needed help. In the end, he erased the board for her, feeling a sense of accomplishment as he did so. Once the task was finished, she thanked him with great joy. With a smile on his face, he replied, It was no trouble at all. If you ever need help again, just ask me. The other girl, who had been watching, praised him, saying he had done well. It's only a matter of time before you become popular, she added. Kudo shook his head, insisting it wasn't that easy. But she pointed out he was wrong. Being kind is extremely important and something people often undervalue. Kindness is an aspect of life that's often overlooked by those trying to flirt. Judging by the look on her face, she must have appreciated that small gesture. Kudo didn't fully understand what she meant about writing his own romantic comedy, but he felt a sense of warmth from the interaction. As he was cleaning the floor in the hallway, someone called his name. It was the same girl he had helped earlier. She approached him just to thank him for his assistance. Since he took a while to respond, she reminded him, You helped clean the blackboard. Kudo replied, It was no problem at all. She didn't mean to come all the way just to thank him, but she disagreed. There's something I wanted to say. Though it might seem a bit sudden, she began, but then she became too embarrassed to continue. I'm sorry, she said, blushing. I accidentally bit my tongue. What she really wanted to ask was if he would like to walk her home. This startled him, realizing it would just be the two of them. She quickly added, Don't take it the wrong way. It's simply to grab some donuts, since a new shop opened near the station, and I don't have any friends to go with me. She explained that she was a very shy person. Earlier, Kudo had told her she could ask for help if she needed it. With tears in her eyes, she asked if his silence meant a refusal. He quickly assured her it didn't. I would gladly accompany you, he said, feeling a rush of excitement. Thank you, she said happily. Let's meet after school. As she left, Tamada appeared, teasing him about managing to get a date. But you absolutely can't tell her you're living with another girl. Of course, Kudo wouldn't say that, but he didn't know how to handle the situation. It felt like he was caught in some kind of fake love triangle, and doing this made him feel guilty. Then he remembered that Tamada didn't have any feelings for him. He needed to let go of her as soon as possible. He didn't know what the future held, but it was important for him to make friends and expand his horizons. Before, that had been completely impossible due to excessive bullying. Finally, he could enjoy what life had to offer. As he was about to leave, Tamada had one more request for him. Even if you go on the date, I want to hear all about it, she said, handing him a pen that was actually a disguised microphone. You'll also need to wear these earphones, she added, revealing they were listening devices so she could tell him what to say. That way you can follow my instructions even if we're apart. Just remember, don't try anything funny. As Kudo bid farewell to Tamada, she wished him good luck on his date. It felt like an enormous weight had been placed on his shoulders. While he was lost in thought, the girl he was going on a date with approached him, asking if he had been waiting long. He replied that he hadn't, and together they left the school, heading toward the station. Kudo was fully equipped with the listening device and earphones, which felt a bit strange. Through the earphones, Tamada asked if he could hear her. When he confirmed he could, he tapped his ear twice as instructed. Now, he needed to pay attention to her words and repeat them one by one. "Start immediately," she instructed. He assumed this had to be a joke, but he went along with it. Kudo asked the girl if she liked donuts. "Yes," she replied enthusiastically. Based on her response, he said, "I really like that kind of sweet treat too." He felt like he was almost dying of embarrassment as he repeated his words. Finally, they arrived at the donut shop she had mentioned. The girl kept guiding him, and he admitted, "This is my first time here." It wasn't the kind of store he usually went to. Looking at the items, he said they all seemed delicious, but there were so many it was hard to choose. The girl said she'd love to try them all, but 2 donuts would be too much for her to eat alone. "I know exactly how you feel about that," he replied, feeling a little more at ease. After that, the girl seemed to have something else on her mind. She pointed out that the words he was saying didn't seem like they came from him. "Why do you have an earpiece in your ear?" she asked. Her curiosity piqued. Through his earpiece, he heard Tamada suggest that he propose they share the same donut. Looking at the girl, he followed the suggestion. He thought she might not want to do that, given her momentary silence. But she surprised him by saying she didn't mind as long as it was with him. That was great. They could place their order. Kudo told her not to worry, because, besides ordering the donut, he'd also get a drink for her. The girl couldn't help but think he was really kind and thoughtful. When he returned to the table with their order, the donuts looked absolutely delicious. She thanked him for his kindness and offered him money to cover her part of the order. He had been instructed not only to refuse the money, but also to say something about it. "Don't worry about the cost," he told her. "It's just another kind gesture from me." The girl insisted she would feel terrible if she didn't pay. Then, through his earpiece, he heard Tamada instruct him to take her hands and say something else. "I'm trying to be a gentleman on this occasion," he said, looking into her eyes. "Please allow it." Overwhelmed, she said that was fine. After all this, she asked if there was a girl Kudo liked. Tamada was thrilled with the progress they were making. He admitted there wasn't anyone he liked at the moment. "That's great," she said, her eyes sparkling. "Because if you liked someone, I'd have to kill them." What she said was absurd, and Kudo thought, "This girl is crazy." With a smile on her face, she added, "I'm just joking." Repeating the words from his earpiece, he told her, "You're very intense and almost gave me a heart attack." After that, the girl seemed to have something else on her mind. She pointed out that the words he was saying didn't seem like they came from him. "Why do you have an earpiece in your ear?" she asked. Her curiosity piqued. Kudo felt a rush of panic. He had to think quickly. It's just a new thing I'm trying out," he stammered, trying to sound casual. But the girl wasn't convinced. "Really? It seems a bit suspicious." Kudo knew he had to remove the device, but he hesitated. Tamada realized she couldn't help Kudo anymore. He explained that before meeting her, he had been listening to music and had forgotten he still had the earpiece on. But those words didn't convince her. She believed he still wasn't telling her the truth. Kudo noticed a sudden shift in her mood as the girl started crying, thinking that in the end, he didn't care about her at all. Kudo tried to fix the situation, insisting that wasn't true. "It's fine," she said, wiping her tears. "I know that an amazing guy like you would never pay attention to someone like me." She apologized, assuming he must just want to go home now. "That's not how I feel at all," he replied earnestly. "I've really enjoyed talking to you." He asked if she was still interested in going on more dates with him. She said she was interested in continuing the conversation, and once they were done, she wanted to know if he would be interested in going to her house. Kudo was a little surprised by the proposal. She noticed his hesitation and assumed he might not want to. He didn't know what to do. Going with her would mean leaving Tamada waiting, but he couldn't leave the girl alone in this emotional state. After a moment of deliberation, he agreed to go with her, regretting that he'd have to keep Tamada waiting. He set a condition: he wouldn't stay long at her place. Once inside her home, he asked for permission to enter and inquired if she lived alone. She said yes, explaining that her parents were very busy, but sent her money to support herself. "I'm very grateful for the parents I have," she said, smiling. She asked him to make himself comfortable while she prepared some tea. Kudo offered to help with anything, not realizing what she was about to do. Suddenly, she struck him on the head with a vase with brutal force. There was nothing he could do but fall to the ground as blood gushed from the wound. Finally, she said, "I'm going to borrow your phone for a moment." She had suspected he had been lying to her the whole time. Checking his messages, she confirmed he had been talking to another girl. "You need to learn a small lesson," she said coldly, "and I'll do this for the other girl's sake as well." Just then, Tamada appeared, saying this girl was even more interesting than she initially thought. Kudo could only feel his consciousness slowly fading away as he succumbed to the darkness. When he woke up, he found his body completely tied up. Above him was the crazy girl, wearing nothing but her underwear, looking delighted that he was awake. He became nervous, not understanding why she was nearly naked. "I didn't want to stay in my clothes with blood," she explained casually, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. This made him extremely anxious. "I'm going to begin punishing you right away," she said, her tone chilling. "You pretended to like that other girl and played with her heart. For that, I will never forgive you." Kudo desperately insisted that it was never his intention to hurt anyone and asked who this girl was that the crazy girl was talking about. She told him she was referring to Arara Rio, but Kudo was taken aback when she confirmed that the girl was insane for referring to herself in the third person. "Actually, I'm the older sister," she clarified, her tone unsettlingly calm. "My name is Rina." To Kudo, this was strange as they looked identical. Rina explained that this was expected since they shared the same body. "Have you ever heard the term split personality?" Apparently, this was a new concept for him. Rina continued, saying that their parents had been a bit absent lately, but that hadn't always been the case. "They used to beat me for any reason and often locked me up in the garden shed," she recounted, her voice tinged with bitterness. "I would beg them to let me out, crying for my father to open the door because I was terrified. But the more I screamed, the greater my panic grew, and nothing happened. In that state of complete despair, she wished for someone to save her. That's when the second personality emerged, to ensure she wouldn't feel pain. I needed to use the girl's body for that," Rina explained. "I promised I would protect her, and that's how I came into existence. I exist to protect Rio. I have the right to be happy, and that's why I can't stand men like you who toy with her heart. Now you will regret everything you've done to her." Kudo's heart raced as she revealed her intentions. "I'll start with your eyes," she said, her excitement palpable. "I'll carve up your beautiful little face with the edge of my blade." Desperately, Kudo tried to suggest they could talk about the situation, but she had already passed the point of being able to discuss anything rationally. He attempted to explain what he was actually trying to do with her, but before he could finish, the doorbell rang. "Someone's outside," Rina said, irritation creeping into her voice. "I'll ignore whoever it is." But the persistent ringing prevented her from starting her work. The door was being jiggled, making her wonder if this was some kind of prank. The sound was too suspicious. The person wasn't just manipulating the doorknob but trying to break in. When the door finally opened, Tamada stepped inside, her eyes widening as she took in the scene. Kudo was completely tied up, and there was a crazy person on top of him. For Tamada, it wasn't difficult to open the door. She had plenty of tricks up her sleeve. "What's happening here is utterly disgusting," she said, her voice firm. Kudo tried to explain that it wasn't what she thought it was and that he desperately needed help. Tamada replied, "All of this only happened because you refused to listen to me.